Hello, my name is Eva Slusnys, and this is the microfiction to film project. The story that I specifically covered for my project is Loneliness by Edgar Marquez, or story number 8. And the first things that I want to kind of note down are my first impressions through my first reading of Loneliness. The first thing that I got from my first reading was the absolute silence. None of the characters talk to each other. None of the characters seem to really ever interact with each other besides simply looking at each other or following each other very, very, very slightly behind. Another aspect that I've noticed in my initial reading is the solemn mood throughout the entirety of the story. The story definitely does encompass loneliness. There's a big disconnect between people besides the fact that they're following each other around. And one thing that that I definitely wanted to highlight in my film adaptation is that throughout the entirety of the piece, the protagonist, what is it, Alberic Reiner specifically, that's the protagonist. He was basically in control the entire of the time. He was the one following people. He was never the one being followed. And in the end, when he was being followed and he initially noticed, there was a semblance of terror within him that did a complete tone shift. And I definitely wanted to mark this in my film adaptation. Some things from the film translation rubric that I also wanted to incorporate is that I obviously didn't want this to just be a copy and paste rendition of the story, so I did do a couple tweaks that I feel like would more modernize it for the viewer and would also kind of make a bit of a greater impact on modern audiences as well. So first off, in scene one, I started off the scene. This is completely out of the story. I did it before the story initially started, where Alberic was specifically on the train that he got off of. And I did this, I wanted to introduce the character a bit, so I showed his name tag saying that he might be like a fast food employee or someone else like a Target employee with the name tag to kind of also ensue a tone of kind of dreariness because no one really likes working specifically for corporations like that. And then what I want to do? I wanted to pan upward towards the clock because in the story it noted that it was past 12 at a particular time when people were busy. So I did it at 3 because usually that's when a lot of people get off of work. And then I panned it up to his face to show that he's bored as well. And next up, I also did it when he was on the train, the Welcome to XX Station. I didn't know of a name. And basically, he's completely and utterly just does not care whatsoever. He's indifferent about it. And I did a transition wave of someone walking past, and then a cut shot, and then back when he's outside of the train. And again, he looks completely and utterly just indifferent, defazed, and bored. We then see what is it, an over the head type of shot. I didn't know the specific name for this shot. Aimed towards the man towards the case. It looks at his case and then and then it goes to a mid torso shot of the man with the case. And then we have a side, what is it, close up shot of Alberic intensely looking at him. Then, what is it? This shot is just him moving forward. I specifically did a close-up shot, and then he would go out of the frame to show that he's moving with, what is it? The man. Because it all kind of goes over to the right, so it would be pleasing for the viewer as well. And then on this end, you could see, yep, he's going off to the side, he's following him. A specific aspect of this that was marked in the story is how, what is it, this man with the briefcase specifically, he kind of was gambling with the lights to see, he didn't really seem like he cared where he was going, he was just going places. He didn't really seem like he had any direction or anything, he was just meandering, so I wanted to highlight that in the film as well. And you could also see this from the character's reaction, because he saw a bit of hesitancy from the, what is it, man beforehand, so he's supposed to have a bit of a confusing reaction. And then I did an overhead shot to just show, what is it, them following each other moving, and I did a still shot of, what is it, the crosswalk sign, kind of a semblance of silence and just in general put an entirety of tone of a bit of loneliness. Then I did an over the shoulder shot, again assuming that he's following. And then what is it? And within the story, the man was shocked and he stopped to the side and he looked through a window. And I highlighted that in this one. A main difference that I did from the story, though, I basically, instead of the man and the protagonist, stopping ideally, I made him stop on the side and kind of hide a bit. And then furthermore, after that, the old lady comes out, he's hiding, he's looking at him from the side. And then I did a specifically a zoom angle on the, like a zoom for, to show his specific expression changing. And I wanted to do a kind of a blurry shot where the protagonist is out of focus and then in focus after the zoom and after the man leaves the shot. And you're supposed to see that right here. And then we have an extreme long shot or an extreme wide shot. Then we have a bird's eye view of them passing through, just to give a sense of disconnect in like overall a lot of space. And sadly, my mine over here kind of got cut. They got deleted. I don't know what happened to them, and I didn't really have time to redo them. This is supposed to be the old lady leaving the store, the store, and then the old man, not the old man, the man just looking at what is it? Oh no, sorry, excuse me. This is supposed to be the lady, entering the store, and this is supposed to be a man looking at the door. And this one I had to cut out completely. Excuse me for that. What is it? As she's entering the store. The man takes out a lighter and starts smoking a cigarette. And instead of placing his leaning against the mailbox like in the story, I put him next to a newspaper dispenser. And also within this instance, instead of the protagonist crossing the street, I made him buy coffee off a semblance of just like basically continually peering an eye over the side of his shoulder. Again, he's looking at the coffee, looking at the man. What is it? And I did a high angle shot specifically over the door to basically create a sense of unease, such as that of like a balloon that is about to burst. And there's a complete wash of silence over these shots. So it's supposed to really, really build up to any semblance of noise that happens to create a better impact. And that's exactly what happens when the pregnant lady leaves the store. Was the bell off the door starts ringing, and it basically kind of shocks the viewer and brings them like back to, oh my goodness, like this is back to the scene. And then as she leaves, we see the old lady leave, then the man, then the protagonist all the way in the back. It's showing a kind of line, and then this is emphasized even furthermore on our extra wide shot in which they're following each other. Then I wanted to do a fisheye lens specifically here, because fisheye lenses could also, be a representation of a camera, of something continuously looking at you. And this is exactly what we have right here. Here we have a man looking at a man looking at a woman looking at a woman. It's just an entire chain of just people basically stalking each other on a certain end. And then we see the children. This was also discussed within the story in which the children played in a sandbox, but instead I wanted to do the entire like story set in winter, to have a kind of colder and a more like kind of lonely filled tone within and throughout the entirety of the story. And then yes, we see the woman sit down, the entirety of everybody kind of getting comfortable. Then we do individual shots of everybody kind of doing their own thing, but still kind of keeping an eye on each other. This one is a bit blurry, excuse me for that. The woman is supposed to notice the light coming into her eye, and she can see that dusk is approaching. This was also emphasized within the story as well. She sees the man with the toolbox, and she begins following them, passing each and every character as she goes by. And specifically, I wanted to highlight about how the protagonist, how when the woman passes, you could also see the man with the toolbox, and the protagonist is just kind of standing there, because he's basically the start of this entire chain, and basically he's also going to be the end of it. And I kind of wanted to emphasize that. Then we see the children kind of screaming and running away over to to the left. And I wanted to get rid of the children specifically so that there could be a better tone of silence for when they're gone, kind of showing the impact that this kind of chain is coming to an end. And then we see a couple solemn tones because this is an impact of loneliness. The woman gets up solemnly, she leaves first, then the man leaves the park, and then the protagonist leaves the park. And specifically within the last scene that I wanted to embark on is that the protagonist is walking aimlessly throughout the lights have kicked on. there's kind of people walking around, but they're very, very off in the distance. He can't really notice them. But there's a general sense of unease. And what is it? And I wanted to embark on how the protagonist is completely engulfed in light, specifically in this impact. It's supposed to show like throughout the entirety of the movie he had control. He was like the one watching. But then as he begins to walk past and the light begins to fade, he's no longer in control, as you could hear the footsteps of someone behind him lurking and watching him. And this is supposed to create a better impact as well upon the viewer and upon the protagonist as well, to say that you are no longer in control, and this is basically the tides have turned, and also to emphasize a lot of dread. Yeah, so that is my basically my analysis of my story board. I believe I did a good job. I'm really proud of it. I do feel it like needs a couple tweaks here and there, but overall I think it's not that bad. Um, Thank you. Yeah.